My name is Bill Brady. I'm a member of the Social Justice Committee at Corpus Christi, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Lenten Forum, which we're calling Young and Hungry, Youth Hunger in Minnesota and What We Can Do About It. A couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. We'll be taking your questions throughout the forum via the chat mechanism on your screen. Lori Tierney from our Social Justice Committee is going to be collecting and kind of organizing them, and we'll answer as many of them as we can in the last segment of the evening. Also, please note that we are recording this event for posting on the Corpus Christi website. If you don't want your image recorded for posterity, you can turn off your camera now, although we'd like it if you could. Yes. Somebody, oh, I don't know how to mute everybody. Liz, maybe.
Bill, you're muted.
Of course I am. Okay.
Sorry, Bill, I accidentally muted you too with everyone.
Well, you muted everybody. Yeah, so that's all right. Well, that I didn't say much anyway. So we're going to start now by asking our pastor, Father Michael Gudovich, to lead us in our opening prayer. Father. Liz, you told me he was.
I think I'm on now, yes?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Father.
I was muted. Okay, let's pray in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Our dear God, dear source of being itself, dear sustainer and sustenance of all that lives, dear fulfillment of all that you promise, we gather in this hour to have opened the eyes and ears of our hearts, of our souls, to see what is uncomfortable to see, to hear what might call us to be more so a part of your consolation, to know in order that we might act rightly, lovingly, courageously. Lord, we ask you to teach us well through the sharing of our speakers here. Let us come to know the truth of hunger and the burdensome challenge it poses to so many young people in these days. Move our hearts to care about that, to care about them. Thank you for this opportunity, for our teachers tonight, for every single one of us whom you have inspired to be here together. Thank you for the gift of our hearts, hearts that can know love and receive love and share love. God bless us all now, and bless all brothers and sisters around the world who are hungry at this very moment, especially the young ones. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ, our brother and Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Before we introduce our panel, I want to just briefly lay out kind of the issue before us. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which is a nonpartisan think tank, the number of households struggling to put enough food on the table spiked last spring, not surprisingly, to nearly 3 times what it was before the pandemic. And it pretty much stayed there over the summer, and then it rose even higher as we headed into the winter. And of course, the winter is when a lot of people's budgets, they have to choose between heat and food. So that's bad, but the story for children, even worse. One analysis of census data estimates about 12 million children nationwide live in a household where there isn't enough food, and that is 10 times what it was at the end of 2019. Think about that. Those are the national numbers. Here in Minnesota, similar story. Before COVID, experts said 1 in 11 residents struggle to afford food. Now they think the number is more like 1 in 8. And for children, it may be as many as 1 out of every 5. That's according to Second Harvest Heartland. So we've invited a number of folks from the front lines of the hunger battle here tonight to help us paint a fuller picture. I'll introduce all of them, and then we'll kind of go get started with one at a time. Nate Youngblood is Associate Director for Every Meal, which is headquartered in Roseville. He joined the organization in 2019. He has, before that, 15 years of experience in nonprofit leadership. He and his wife, Emily, live in Bloomington with their 3 kids. Kelly Miller is a member of Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. She grew up in Onamia, Minnesota, just outside the Mille Lacs Lake Indian Reservation. She started as an intern for Interfaith Action of Greater St. Paul's Department of Indian Work Food Shelf back in 2016. She's been working her way up and was promoted to director of the department in 2019. When she's not working, she and her husband are busy parenting their 2 young children here in Roseville. Mary Christensen, a junior at Highland Park Senior High. She's been a member of Corpus Christi for all of her 16 years on planet Earth. She is president of Highland Park Senior High Service Club, which is called the Good Club. And this year, the club is focused on creating food distributions where Highland families in need can receive food. And joining us in a few minutes, not yet here, I don't believe, is Mary McCune, a president and CEO of Keystone Community Services. It's a multi-service nonprofit, serves about 35,000 people in Ramsey County. And Mary has been working in community-based organizations for 30 plus years and serving as vice president at Keystone before taking over the top job in 2016. So I'm going to start by asking each of you to give us kind of a brief synopsis of your organization's mission, how it seeks to accomplish that mission, and how COVID has changed things for you in the past year. Nate Youngblood from Every Meal, could we start with you, Nate?
Sure. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. And we just appreciate you taking time to learn more about this very important issue. Every Meal was started 10 years ago out of a church that was meeting in a school in Northeast Minneapolis. That school was contacted by that church was contacted by the principal of the school because they were having trouble with children hoarding food in the food line on Fridays in particular. And they knew that they had a problem. They knew that kids didn't have enough to eat, but they didn't have the resources to help address the issue. And so they asked the church, hey, is there something you can do to try and help us figure this out? So the church felt like that was something that was reflective of their mission and decided to lean in. And so they started leaning in. And out of that process, Every Meal was born. Our mission is to fight child hunger through school and community partnerships. Essentially, we believe that the food issue is a logistics issue. It's not a supply issue. We know there's plenty of food here in the United States. It's just not getting to the people who don't have it. And so what the team did at that church is they kind of leaned into the idea of a backpack program. And so they started figuring out ways, how do we get food in kids' backpacks so that they can take it home and have it over the weekends when they don't have access to food that the school cafeteria is providing or food that their parents are able to provide. And through that process, they just kept leaning in. How do we do this better? How do we serve the students better? How do we better understand their needs? And out of that, we developed a process where we partner with local schools, where we work with volunteers in those schools to place backpacks in students' backpacks who sign up for the program. And then try to make sure that the food that those students receive is delicious, nutritious, and relevant for their cultural preferences. The need for us, we see it as being every bit what Bill described with the statistics he talked about. Pre-COVID, we were serving about 325 different locations. We were averaging around 23,000 meals a week. Post-COVID, so once COVID hit, we're currently closer to 38,000 meals a week. And in our height in the summer, we were doing closer to 100,000 meals a week. And so we've seen kind of a huge influx and spike in the need. So yeah, I'll stop there and let some of my other colleagues and friends share a little bit more about what they've been doing. But that's kind of the focus that we've been spending our time on.
let's move on. Thank you, Nate. Next, Kelly Miller from Department of Indian Work at Interfaith Action of Greater St. Paul. Kelly?
Yeah, hi. So at Interfaith Action, our mission is to we mobilize diverse faith and spiritual communities to engage in work that supports our neighbors' stability and economic mobility. Our Department of Indian Work, we have three main focus programs, which is our emergency services, that is a food shelf and clothing closet. Our American Indian Youth Enrichment, it's an after school and summer literacy program. And then our diabetes program. And then recently, since COVID, we are one of MDH's COVID community coordinators. So we have a COVID resource hotline for the American Indian community. DIW started in 1952 after the Relocation Act. The Relocation Act was when Native Americans were encouraged to move from the reservations to the cities. They were promised jobs and houses and, a better life. Come to the cities. It's going to be a way better life. And when they got here, it was broken promises. So DIW was started to help with that, to help with food, to help with a safe place to go so they could practice their ceremony, so they could have a safe place to be Indigenous because they were in a new city and they didn't know much. So that's how we were started. We became a program of interfaith action in 1972, I believe. And we've been growing ever since. Pre-COVID, our numbers were much lower. We're not as big as some of the other bigger food shelves because we focus on the American Indian community in the East Metro, and we are much smaller. So before COVID, we were serving about 160 unduplicated households a month. And then once COVID hit, those numbers completely doubled. So now we're serving about 300 to 400 unduplicated households a month, which it's still climbing. So thank you for letting us talk. I know we're kind of limited on time, so I'll let some other people talk as well.
Thank you, Kelly. And next is a face that may be familiar to many of you. It's Mary Christensen from Highland High School. Mary.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. So I'm the president this year of the Good Club at Highland Park Senior High School. And the mission of the Good Club, it was started in 2019 because some students at Highland saw that there's a great need in our community and they wanted to help. And there are also lots of Highland students who wanted to get involved, but they didn't really know how. So their mission is to provide opportunities for Highland Park students to help those in need in their community, as well as to educate on social justice issues in our community and provide service to families in our area to create a more informed student body that is ready to make change. We believe that there's a great need to help Highland students and their families, and especially now in this time, we've seen that there's an even bigger need for many who can't get their basic food and hygiene products and that type of thing. And so this year, we've worked on many different aspects, but one of our main projects has been helping to create food distributions where Highland Park families can come and get fresh food. We noticed with COVID that although we were doing many other projects, this was the one we thought would directly help Highland students, because since COVID, many families who attend our school have been without school in person, and just with many people like losing their jobs and other things, there has been a huge spike in students who can't get food or who are facing food insecurity. And so we have been working through getting donations from Highland Park students for non-perishable foods, which we have distributed. And we've also been working with getting monetary donations and working with other movements such as Gloria Day, Lutheran Church, and the JK movement to provide fresh foods, which we buy. And so we've by now had many food pop-ups this year, which are temporary food giveaways set up in a location for the day or until our supplies run out. At these, we give away bags of fresh food that are provided through our partnerships and through other monetary donations. And then we have also distributed non-perishables, which were donated by Highland students, as well as other items such as coats and masks that families need. These have been about monthly. and we're currently working on another one right now. Before COVID, our club was able to meet in person, but we kind of had a different focus because this year we felt that the biggest need was regarding food insecurity and other basic needs. And so before, our club more went to other places to do work, but we decided with all the need of Highland students, it would be in our best interest to help those people that are directly surrounding us and their families, because they had such a great need as well. We believe that we have made our efforts so more focused since COVID, and we've also had a lot more members and participation, more people who have wanted to help, but there's also been a greater need for food, and we believe we have to keep working on this because in the Highland community, many staff members that we have worked with have noticed that the food, when they gave out food before, it was taken, but now even more families that they hadn't seen before have been coming and needing more and more.
Wow, great stuff. Thank you, Mary. Do you know if is Mary McCune joined us yet? She
Yes,
has.
I have.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Mary McCune from Keystone Community Services. Mary, we're just asking folks to describe the organization and especially how it's been impacted by COVID.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight. I was coming from our board meeting, so sorry I was a little bit late, but I'm thrilled to be here to kind of share a little bit about what Keystone has been doing and really what's happening in our community in general around food insecurity and what's happening with youth and seniors in our community as well. So Keystone's mission is to strengthen the capacity of individuals and families to improve their quality of life. And we've been doing this for over 80 plus years. About 81 and a half years ago, our founders recognized that there was a real need for families, seniors, and youth in the community surrounding the Merriam Park area and the Midway to feel more connected with each other. And this was before 94 went in. This was quite a while ago, but there were new people moving into the community, and they said, boy, if people don't feel connected, then they don't feel part of the community, and then they can't thrive. So we're doing the same work 80 plus years later. And really kind of building on the foundation that our founders put in place and the neighbors in our community put in place, is that we thrive if we are all feeling connected and if we all have what we need. And so that's really been a focus of Keystone's for the last 80 years. And it also, when we are feeling connected, we can thrive, as we've seen, and Mary described, and Nate described, and Kelly described, communities coming together over the last year and really being able to put forth a lot of effort to make sure that everyone in our community has the needs taken care of. We're one of the largest human service organizations in Ramsey County. And so one of the things we've worked really hard at is being there, just really being there when people come to us. We say it all the time. Word of mouth is the way people find out about Keystone. Someone says, oh, I went over here to Keystone, or I did this at Keystone. And so one of the things that we really worked hard on in the pandemic was that if we told you to tell your friend to come to Keystone, we were ready for you. And we wanted to make sure that we had a variety of safe and kind of easy ways for people to get support. As most of the needs have changed in our community, and since the recession, there's back in 2008, many of the families that we work with and the families that the rest of our groups are talking about really did not recover from the recession, and they have really struggled because wages didn't rise at the same rate that the cost of housing and the cost of food and the cost of household goods. So prior to the pandemic, we had already seen a large increase in the number of people coming to us for support. And we were expecting about a 10% increase in our service delivery in 2020, just without any pandemic. And what we found, and we don't have our final numbers quite put together, but we found that we saw a 13% increase in the number of services that we provided in 2020. And that really was really targeted to people that really had basic needs needing to be supported in the community. So I just say that because I want, and I know that many people know this, but the pandemic has really impacted people that were already struggling, and has created kind of a whole new group of people who never really expected to be struggling, but they were kind of keeping it together, but they weren't, they didn't have a lot of extra at the end of the month or a lot of extra at the end of the year. And so when one person in the family loses their job, or when they lose that third job that kind of helped them keep all of the ducks in a row, that has made it really difficult. And some of those jobs are likely not to come back. I wanted to share some, and I missed your part, Bill, so I don't want to repeat what you said, but there's been a recent survey done in January of 2021 that says that almost 10 million families in our country have children and are experiencing food insecurity. And I agree with what Nate said, 100%. We live in a country of abundance. So this is not about not having food available. It's about how that food gets out into the community. And in Black families, 31% of those families compared to white families, 11% white families are very concerned about food insecurity. And for Latino families, it's 27%. And I know Kelly knows a lot of these things too around the indigenous population. Our families of color are suffering, and they have been suffering the most through the pandemic and prior to the pandemic. Hunger Solutions, which is the statewide advocacy organization for hunger relief, just completed their 2020 stats. And they found that 31% more seniors came to food shelves. And we've experienced that as well in our mobile food shelf distribution. And we also did large food distributions similar to the ones Mary's talking about, where we made them simple, drive up so people could come and anonymously give food in 2020. And we saw a lot more seniors coming to those. And again, young people, and I think we talked about this earlier too, is young people are being really affected by this, because if their families don't have enough food, it's very difficult to go to school and do it virtually or figure out how to be a learner when your family is worried about whether or not they have enough food to pay for you. So those are just some of the kind of bigger overarching issues that Keystone is trying to address in some very basic ways. And so I'm going to finish my piece and let us get on to the next question.
All right, thank you very much, Mary. Appreciate it. You talked a little bit about youth, and that is kind of the main focus of what we're talking about tonight. And I wanted to ask each of you about the special challenges that you see young people in your constituency facing in today's environment. What challenges they face and what challenges you face serving them that may be different than serving a typical adult population. Why don't we start with Kelly Miller this time? Kelly, from Department of Indian Work Interfaith Action.
Yeah, so we serve our youth in two separate programs. So at our food shelf is family driven. It's it's focused on our families. So I'm going to start there. And just like Mary mentioned, some numbers. We learned from the Minnesota Department of Health's Minnesota Student Survey that 31% of communities enrolled in SNAP are American Indian. And of that same survey, 9% of 8th graders reported skipping a meal in the last 30 days just because of lack of money. That's 9% of American Indian youth's 8th graders skipping meals because of a lack of money. That's huge. And that was when they were in school. So when we went to distance learning, our food shelf made sure that we were able to partner with Metro Mobility to deliver food to our families. We were able to secure a van. So we're not in an ideal location, and we've never have been. And transportation has been a big barrier for our families. So we knew that we had to figure out what we were going to do to get food to our families that are homebound and that have kids at home, and now they're not working, and now there's a lockdown, and they don't want to take public transportation transportation and bring their kids out on the bus. So we were able to partner with Metro Mobility to deliver food to families. And then we now have a van that we're able to deliver food to our families, which has been a huge help. So we're able to continue that, delivering food to them. In our youth program, it's been tough reaching our youth. Our teachers and our coordinators were able to see them on a daily basis, and then to just not see them, at all was really tough on them. And then for our summer program, we hosted a summer program online. So we partnered with our food shelf to deliver meal boxes to our youth program. And our youth, we made sure to include easy meals for them, easy meals for parents to come in there to cook meals, all of that with there. I'm trying to look at what else, the challenges our youth face today and how are we meeting those challenges. I think that's pretty much it. How are you? I mean, yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I'm struggling to unmute myself. So sorry for the delay. Nate, obviously, you know, all you do is serve young people. I suppose you could look at that, but if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges that your kids face, and maybe some things that might surprise us that we wouldn't realize.
Sure. So I think it's helpful to take a step back and think about, you know, put yourselves in the shoes of a child, whether it's an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. Pre-pandemic, the routine for almost every child here in Minnesota involved some combination of home and school. And the school experience is going to vary for that child depending on where the school they attend, and they may love school, they may not like school, but regardless, most kids found some sort of interaction and routine and sense of normalcy in school. And then, as you know, when the pandemic hit, all that got taken away. And I saw it in my own kids, the level of anxiety, the confusion, the, you know, lack of sense of settledness. And so when we think about kids and how they've been affected over the last year, the reality is it goes much deeper than just, do we have food to eat or do we not? The reality is food is one of the most critical things for life and for a child to develop successfully and to be able to engage in education. So it's incredibly critical. But I think it's easy to forget in the midst of all the moving pieces of COVID, what a radical shift children have gone through the entire state and really through the whole country. And so for us, as an organization, I mentioned that our mission is to fight hunger through school and community partnerships. The main way we do that is by creating partnerships with schools and with other organizations that want to not only help fund the food that we distribute, but also help distribute it. So typically that means a community of faith or a business that comes into a school on a weekly cadence and actually helps distribute the food and puts it into the kids' backpacks while the kids are in school, in class. So for us, we really saw, I would categorize some of the challenges we saw in 2 areas. The first is children are no longer, have not been in the location where they normally would be. So you've heard a little bit of that through kind of the fuzziness of the stats that we've been able to share from the last year, because the reality is we don't know where all the kids have gone. If you hear school districts talk about the status of their students, they've had enrollment changes that are pretty significant. And so that again highlights the fact that students are moving all over the place. They're finding different ways to be educated, which is good because the need is being met. But they're also moving because their home life has become unstable. They may have been kicked out of their apartment, or they may have had to move. There's just a lot of variables in play. And so for us, that question of how do we find kids who are hungry has become much more difficult, because previously we could always find them in the school. So that's one thing. It's just accessing and understanding where is the need and where is the gap, where is the child who does not have access to food. That's been one issue. And then for us, the other issue is because we were partnering directly with schools, kids are no longer in schools. So the main way that we would access or get food to those students has had to change. And so we've been able to modify our processes around how we interact with schools and how we help source schools on one level. But on the other level, we've really had to scramble and think critically about where do we find those kids? How do we understand where their new kind of rhythm of life exists? And along with that, there's that pocket of hunger, wherever those pockets of hunger are, have moved as well. And so we've really broadened our network. We work with 60 or 70 community sites now that are different than a normal school setup, in an effort to get food into those parts of the communities that are not being reached by schools. I think the schools overall have done a phenomenal job of changing their nutritional kind of activities to try and reach those kids. And so many schools in Minnesota are actively generating food and sending it home with students, or having pickup sites where students can come pick food up, which has been a huge help. And will continue to be a help moving forward. I think the last part of your question was just around challenge. What are the challenges we face moving forward? And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen is just how dynamic, and I think we've all experienced this, how dynamic the changes we face because of COVID have become. And so I keep telling my staff, I feel like we're in a 4 to 6 week planning cycle. Whereas before we could think about a 90-day planning cycle, or maybe a 6 month or a yearly planning cycle. And we've really had to reevaluate every 4 to 6 weeks around, okay, where are the students? How do we get to them? How do we get food where they need to go? And doing all of that while the government and different cities and states are changing their standards on when and how we can interact and what's appropriate and what's safe. So all those things kind of create a challenge for our students. But it's our job to kind of figure that out, and that's what we've done.
Right, thank you. Mary McCune, again, same question. What special challenges around young people, both in the challenges they face and the challenges you face serving them?
Great. Thank you. So Keystone serves over our 2020 numbers, where we served about 42,000 people, and about 14,000 of them, a little over 14,000 of them are youth. And many of them are youth that are served, as Kelly mentioned, in families through our food shelf and our crisis support services. We also offer after-school programs, youth employment programs for youth. And through the pandemic, we were able to serve a fair number of the young people that came to us through our after-school programs. And one of the things that really, as Nate was saying, we haven't gone to look for them in school. They used to come to us right after school and participate. And so trying to reach out to them and stay connected to their families and make sure their families were connected to resources as well was a big focus of ours. Because we also knew that a lot of families that had never struggled with food insecurity were really challenged, because as they were trying to figure out the pandemic and figure out distance learning and all of those things, and changes in their own employment, it became really challenging for them. So our youth programs typically focus on helping young people with academic and social skills so that they can be really thriving members of their families, of their school communities, of the community in general, and then also of their workplaces. That's really the focus of what we do in our after-school programs. Again, as I said, and as Nate mentioned and Kelly did, this has been a really tough year on young people and on their families. And so we've been trying to really focus on making sure those basic needs are taken care of, but as well as some of those social emotional needs that are tough to be taken care of by mom and dad or by the same household over and over and over again. So we've done a lot of work on virtual activities, really, again, sending boxes to kids' homes, doing some of the things that Kelly was speaking about, trying to just stay connected. And again, what we're hearing from families, and we talk to them regularly, we survey them, is they are just yearning to get back in person. The young people are, their families are, But there's also still a fair amount of concern about what that looks like for each community. And we work with a wide variety of cultural groups, and many of them do have significant concerns about the vaccine. And they have concerns about sending their children into places where people might have COVID. So we're dealing with all of that at Keystone, and really just doing the most that we can to try and support the work that their families are trying to do for them. I think the place where we saw kind of some of the biggest challenges is that one of the ways that we supported families in 2020 and youth in particular is through our drive-through distributions. It was a wonderful way to bring the food resources to the community. This was the farm to food shelf program that was run by USDA. So it was essentially taking food that farmers had grown in anticipation that restaurants would be open and cafeterias would be open. And now all of a sudden there was no place for that food to go. And so that food was put into a program called CFAP, the COVID Food Assistance Program. And Keystone was one of the providers, particularly in Ramsey County, to get those CFAP boxes of produce, dairies, meats, and kind of shelf-stable items out to families. And so we see ourselves as doing that, continue to do that. One of the challenges was in the winter months, trying to find a place where we could do that. And we were scheduled to do one on February 11th and really struggled because we knew that it was going to be 17 below out that day temperature. And so we canceled. And we rescheduled for tomorrow. And we're doing it in partnership with the state fairgrounds. And then we're doing another one in Roseville on March 6th with the Roseville Public Works Department. But it was a big struggle for us to find places where we could do that work. But one of the things we learned from that, and I think is a challenge that all of us are facing, is that, as I said earlier, we have a lot of people that are food insecure and they've never asked for help before. And so how do we make it possible for them to feel comfortable and to feel like they can come and get the support through any of our programs in a way that makes them not feel shamed or feel like, you know, there's something wrong with them. And I think that's one of the things that we have felt good about these food distributions is they're simple, very anonymous ways. And we've heard from our members that have participated in those, that has really kind of opened the door, just a crack, for them to kind of see that Keystone or Every Meal or Division of Indie Works or what's going on at Highland High School, these are ways that our community can come and get help, and it's okay to come and get that help. I would say that is probably one of our biggest challenges, is really kind of sending that message out to our community. And that's where we need the help of people like you, is to say, it's okay. These meals, you know, this food from the farmers, they want it to go to people that need it. And so how do we send that message and make sure that families really know that these programs are for them? And this is exactly why food shelves started back in the 70s, was because people occasionally needed time to get, you know, some extra help. At Keystone, on average, people come to our food shelf 3 times a year. So they're coming really when they need that extra little support to help them stretch their meals because they had to buy 4 new tires for their car or something like that. So I think we're just needing to educate a whole nother group of people about how important it is that they do access these resources and that we are there for them. And that's the whole point. So I think that's, one of the challenges that we are faced with, is really trying to educate our community about how important it is that they do come and access these resources. And that's exactly what we're all here for.
Thanks, Mary. And you bring up a really good point about the stigma that can be attached to needing this kind of thing. And Mary Christensen, I kind of wanted to ask you about that, because you're serving your classmates, or at least your classmates' families. And I'm wondering if you had to deal with maybe the stigma and of your fellow classmates, or that your fellow classmates feel, and how you have had to, how your group handles that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. So we've been definitely have noticed that we want to make it as little as possible, the stigma surrounding it, so people feel comfortable coming. And because of that reason, we have had student volunteers limited at our actual distributions. We've been having lots of students help with getting the food prepared, but we haven't had lots of people at the actual distribution, so it feels less like their classmates are watching what's happening, just because we don't want anyone to be uncomfortable with that. And we've also had it be drive-throughs where they can just get bags, kind of like what Mary was talking about. We hand bags to people in their cars so that they feel like they can just stay where they are and they don't have to feel uncomfortable if they don't want to get out or anything, because we really just want to help them with their needs, and we want people to feel like they can come without there being anything wrong with it, or that anyone is like watching them, or that their classmates, we want our classmates to feel comfortable coming. And yeah, we've just tried to have it be quick so that people can come and get a bag, and then if they want to, they can also pick out, we've had tables of non-perishables where people can pick out their specific needs if they want to, or they can just tell us what they want and we can put it in a bag for them and bring it to their car. But most of the people running that have been other social workers at the school who have also been, they've been the ones more handing out the bags, while the student volunteers have more been getting it set up. So there's only been a couple students at the actual distributions. But we've definitely seen the stigma surrounding it, and we're working to try to find ways so that, I mean, obviously it would be best if that would go away and people would feel comfortable and not that they have to be ashamed at all to come. But for now, we're trying to just work on making people comfortable so that they can come back when they need food.
Mm-hmm. That's very, very smart the way you guys undertook that. Before we move on, I just want to let everyone know that before we're done tonight, we're going to give you all an opportunity to support the 4 programs that we have featured here tonight. And it's kind of exciting what you'll have there'll be in the chat line a link to the Corpus Christi donate page, and when you get to that page, it'll say, you know, do you want to give for your weekly offering? Do you want to give this? Go to the one that says other, and then just write Youth Hunger Forum, and we're going to take that money and divide it evenly. But what's really exciting is that we're going to be able to match donations dollar for dollar, thanks to a bequest that the church recently received, in which the family asked us to use the money towards human rights work. And we happen to think that full bellies are human rights, or at least not empty bellies are, you know, not a human, you know what I'm saying? So so we are, that's how we're going to be doing it. And it's pretty exciting that we have this opportunity. So I want you all to know that before we leave tonight, that you'll have that opportunity. Let's the next the other thing I wanted to mention is that please send us your questions if you have them, and we'll be getting to the question and answer part soon. What do you see unfolding in the next 12 months? That's the next question. Do we see it getting better, getting worse? Is there any way to know? You know, Nate mentioned, what is it, 6-week planning is as good as we can do right now. But what do we see happening in the next 12 months for your organizations, and how can we help? How can volunteers help, and how, you know, that kind of thing. Let's start with, let's see, who did we start? Let's mix it up a little bit. We'll start with Nate again this time.
Yeah, so I think you asked, somebody asked, is it going to get better or get worse? And I think the answer to that question is yes. I think we'll see some things get better, and I think we'll see some things get worse. And so kind of the picture I have in my head, I don't know if anybody else is an athlete, but I grew up playing sports, and I can vividly remember, like, you know, when you're in the middle of training, you kind of, sometimes you hold your breath, especially if you're swimming. And then there's a calm that comes with that. and then you let your breath out or you finish working out, and there's a little bit of relief, but then there's pain that comes after that, right? Like your muscles are sore, or you may have an injury that pops up that you didn't realize was there in the moment. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think right now everybody is still kind of white knuckling it and figuring out what's happening and holding on for dear life. And then I think as we get through some of the most critical parts of at least the COVID component of this, and things start to loosen up, then the chips are going to start to fall. And I don't know exactly what those chips are going to be as far as from an economic standpoint. I think it's a safe bet to say that some of the economic impact is not, hasn't kind of wound its way all the way through our economic system. And so obviously impacts to jobs and that sort of thing are real potential. So for us, when we think about kids, we think about schools being back in session, and we think about increased need in schools, and that need being two-faced, right? Being food, obviously, but also being just more stress on schools because students are going to be facing different challenges than they were pre-COVID, whether it's because they were distance learning for a while or their situation at home has changed, so many things. And so, we're really focused on how do we be a great partner to our schools? How do we make sure we're equipping them as best as we can to serve students when they come back in? And how do we make sure that we have enough food available so that as those needs kind of ebb and flow, as families need some extra help and then don't need extra help, that we're able to respond to that. The ways you can help are very simple. Obviously, donations are very helpful. We use those donations to purchase food and to get that food to kids. The other opportunity that you have is to actually volunteer. And so the way that we prepare the food to go to schools is we have volunteers come into our facility in Roseville, and they actually prepare the food. They sort the food into the bags of meals that then go out to the schools. And so we've been doing that all through the pandemic, following the Minnesota Department of Health guidelines, and we'll continue doing that for this foreseeable future as we continue to ship food to schools and get it into the backpacks of the kids that can use it.
Great, thank you. Mary Christensen, what do you see happening in the next 12 months for your organization?
Yeah, so I think over the course of the pandemic, there has been so much change in the need of students at our school and everywhere, with people's parents losing jobs and just having a way different home situation, as well as being home all the time with online school and maybe having to care for siblings and other things, and just not having the social interaction of school, as well as just so many other factors that we don't know of. And many people maybe were not able to work. And there's just so many ways that things could have impacted people in a negative way overall. And I think some of that will go back or will get better as we start going back. And so I think for the need, I think it'll still be there for like a long time, what has happened because of COVID. And I think there'll still specifically be this need to a great extent for a while until everything gets back. But I think when we go back to school, some things will improve because I think it'll be easier for our organization to provide food, because right now we've advertised what we're doing, but people still need to get transportation to be able to come. And I think the school has done lots of programs to try to get food to families, but still I think being in school and with people's siblings in school and such like that, I think it will help with some things. But I still think that there are going to be lots of other issues. And I think our club is going to try to keep doing what we've done recently and how our club has starting to go. We will try to continue with this so that we can continue to make food pop-ups. But I do think that there are going to be new struggles with going back to school, and that all of the issues with students and their families and with the food insecurity that has happened as a result of this, I don't think that will go away instantly. But I think for our club, we will continue doing this, and I think once we are back in school, it will be a little bit easier to target the needs of the Highland community. And more specifically be able to help on a more regular basis, and to more people who maybe couldn't get transportation or just have other things that they weren't able to have met when we didn't have school. And so I do think that's a good thing for our community specifically. But I think there will be some other issues too.
Mhm. Thank you. Kelly Miller, Indian work.
Similar to what Nate said, I guess we really don't know. I want to say that it's gonna, in the next 12 months, we are taking it day by day, I guess, or we plan for 6 months and then we plan for 3 months. We hope that we can reopen and we can safely let our families come back in and shop for themselves, and then the numbers increase, and then we are scaling back our plans. And right now we are planning for our youth program with St. Paul Public Schools to be in person, and we know that we are not going to be able to safely say yes until 2 weeks before we go. And that is just not really feasible. So I guess right now for our organization, we will continue to serve our families through our delivery system, through our curbside system, through our partnerships with our community organizations, through our delivery, through curbside pickup, and continue to meet the need. What can you do to help? I think you can donate to your local food shelf. I think you can donate to your local youth programs. If you know somebody struggling with food insecurity, encourage them to utilize your local food shelf, because that's what they're there for. I think that food shelves are not what they used to be. They're not old food on a shelf anymore. They are fresh produce. They are fresh, healthy foods. They are not expired foods. And really, we need to break that stigma that food shelves they're good. They're just mini grocery stores now, and it's really amazing. So that's what you guys can do to help. So thank you guys for having me here.
Well, and speaking of, it's like a grocery store, Target now has, people shop for you and then they deliver it to your car. And that's what the volunteers at Department of Indian Work are doing. We're shopping for the people and putting the bags together, and then the bags go into their cars, and it's just like Target, man. It's really good. There's home delivery and everything.
It is just like Target, yes. And they place their order online at DIW, and we pass. Bill's a volunteer at DIW. Bill and Cheryl are on Mondays. So when an order comes in, we will pass it on, and they'll fill the bag and curbside pickup, and then they'll bring it on up and outside, and they go to their vehicle. So it works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you.
So Mary McCune, I've lost you on my screen, but I'm sure you're here.
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, there you are.
So yeah, so I will answer the question too and just say, ditto, 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 right? I mean, we're all kind of planning 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out, and then as soon as we make a plan, then we have to shift it. So one of the things we are planning to do is we are planning to do 25 of these large food distributions in the community, because we just saw such an outpouring. We supported 32,000 people at those 21 that we did in 2020. And as I mentioned earlier, we just have found this to be a really unique way to bring food to our community. 50% of the people that came to those food distributions last year had never received help or support from Keystone or a food shelf before. So we know we're reaching people through those activities. So we'll keep doing those. In addition to running our food shelves, we have a mobile food shelf program that I didn't even mention, and we were lucky enough to get some resources from the state of Minnesota COVID support to purchase another food mobile. So we will be expanding our food mobile program. And that's where we actually bring the food shelf on wheels to communities. So we bring it to apartment buildings where seniors live, apartment buildings where families live, to school campuses, St. Paul College, University of St. Thomas, Hamlin University. And so we actually bring the food shelf there. And so that's one of the ways that we will be expanding our programs in 2021. We also started, like Kelly did, we worked with Metro Mobility to start a mobile, I should say, a home delivery program of food. And that now we've transitioned to being volunteers. So volunteers deliver home packages. And this is primarily for seniors and people with disabilities that can't get to either one of our mobile sites or to our bricks and mortar spaces. And so we anticipate that by the end of this month, we'll be serving 150 households a month with that home delivery. So those are some of the things that we're planning to do. I saw a question in the chat. Keystone had to close our food shelf in Roseville in 2018. I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019, but we had to close our food shelf because we lost our lease. And so we have been looking for a new space. And at the end of 2020, kind of in the thick of everything that was going on, we purchased a building on University Avenue that we will be turning into a new community food site. It's a 20,000 square foot building that will allow us to receive all of the donations that our community would like to give us. Last year, we had to say no to a semi truck worth of food from Hy-Vee because we simply did not have the storage space to put it. We have food stored all over the city of St. Paul. We have borrowed warehouse space from other nonprofits. We have food at our Marion Park location. So we're trying to find a new space, and we found one, but now we have to raise the money to renovate it and get it equipped. But we'll be really using that space to warehouse food, and then using our mobile food shelf to really bring food to where people are, because even though people can get to the new site on transit, we know that bringing it to where people are living is just easier. I mean, we've all taken kids grocery shopping. It's not any fun to pile kids in a car and go to a grocery store and then unload all that. So we want to do a better job of bringing food and food resources. And our new location too will shop more like a market. That's how our food shelves work right now. And like Kelly said, we all want to be back to that model. And the new facility will offer kind of a much larger shopping area, and it'll feel more like a small mini market where people can get resources. And we work really closely with Second Harvest and with the food group to purchase food from both of them, so that we can have a variety of fresh and frozen and meats and dairies and all kinds of really good, healthy food available for our community. Regarding youth, we will go in person with our youth starting on Monday. Our after school programs are going to go in person. St. Paul Public Schools has been back in session in person with the younger students since the beginning of February. And so we will be doing in person. We did in-person employment with our young people all last year, and we hope to expand that, because during times of high unemployment, young people are the last people to get employed. And we know how important that first job is, and a good job employment experience is for young people in order for them to track towards full employment as an adult. And so we will be expanding those opportunities if we can make that all work. And so some of the ways that you can help, you can volunteer. I mean, all of our organizations need volunteers. We're always in need of volunteers, and those volunteer opportunities can be monthly, they can be weekly, they can be one time. We have a place on our website where you can just log in and fill out an application and let us know what you're available for. The other thing I think that's really important, and that I've been really talking a lot about, is to advocate on behalf of the food programs that are available at the federal level and the state level. So SNAP, there's a big push now to make SNAP benefits, which is food stamps, available to families that are living at the 200% level of poverty. There's a lot of ways that you can just write your legislators in a simple email and just say, I really believe this is really important, because if families have control over their cash that they can spend on food, that's the best of all, right? That's what we all want. And then there have been some new programs where they've taken the money that they were allocating to schools for school nutrition programs, and families are able to use that money if they're signed up for free and reduced lunch to be able to support their families. It's like a small debit card with the cash that they would have given to the school to feed the breakfast and the lunch to the young person. that family can get that. And so those are programs that you can advocate for our community to say, you know, we really need to bring these resources to the community. And then like everybody else, financial support is always helpful. Keystone really appreciates all the support that we get, and we can use it in a lot of different ways. But I also would really encourage you to also reach out and support our BIPOC communities, our organizations in the community that are working very specifically with families and with young people who have been impacted the most by the pandemic, both from a physical standpoint. You know, there's more people of color passing away and being quite ill from COVID than there are people in the white majority. So I think as you can support BIPOC organizations and support that work that they're doing in a very targeted way in their communities, I think that's another way that you can help. And then I just also think that organizations that are very youth focused and have kind of a youth-led, youth voice focus is also another way that you can really make sure that young people are leading the work of the organizations that they're participating in, because that's really important as well.
Well, Mary, you mentioned advocacy, and that is a great segue into our next segment, basically. As you know, all of the organizations we're talking to today are involved in charitable work, but there is the flip side. You know, the Catholic teaching is always kind of two rails. It's charity and it's social justice. Charity is the work of stopping the bleeding, and social justice or advocacy is trying to prevent the bleeding from happening in the first place by addressing societal causes of hunger. And I think it's fair to say advocacy work can be a little trickier, maybe even controversial. There's a famous quote from a Roman Catholic archbishop in Brazil who said, "When I feed the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist." That's the kind of, another biblical scholar said, charity gets you canonized and social justice gets you crucified. So there is it is tricky nonetheless. There are a number of opportunities to become advocates in the coming weeks. And I'd like to ask the chair of our Social Justice Committee, Deanne Stenlin, to outline some of those, and we'll be posting them in the chat line and in an email that we'll send you all tomorrow. Deanne.
Thank you, Bill. So yeah, what we'd really hope for is to actually put these guys all out of business, so we don't have any anybody that's going hungry or doesn't know where their next meal is. So that's why we really would encourage you to take some action for social advocacy. So for many years, Corpus Christi members have written to our Congress people through the Bread for the World offering of letters. And right now they are working on promoting advocacy for supporting legislation which reduce hunger by increasing the child tax credit. Right now, there's an income level that you have to attain. And so anybody that falls below that income level actually doesn't qualify. So they want to eliminate that and have everybody qualify that under a certain income level. So that's something that you can do. Another thing is that there are many days on the Hill that are happening right now for the Minnesota State Legislature. Somebody had mentioned the hunger. I forgot their name now. Anyway, but they have a day on the Hill that is the Hunger Day on the Hill, which is March 1st, and then we also have the Joint Religious Legislation Coalition Day on the Hill and a Housing Day on the Hill. So those are all going to be in the Zoom chat. So these are all Zooms, so you don't have to leave your home. And then when you do the Day on the Hill, you get information about the issues, and then you will have a virtual meeting with your state legislator. So, you can find out who your legislators are, and then actually meet with them. So I would just encourage you to do that. And as Bill said, that the links for these will be in the chat room. So thank
And
you.
as a matter of fact, they just appeared. I was
Okay.
scrambling to do that as you were talking. So, all right. So now we have time for questions. As some of you have already addressed some of the questions that have appeared in the chat. Lori, you have been kind of monitoring. Are there any questions? Oh, I see one question that I think is an interesting question to address it. We've been talking about young families, but what about young adults? That is, college age and college age, whether they're in college or not, and that group, are they an unseen part of this issue? Are they suffering in ways that maybe we don't all see? Mary McCune, maybe we could start with you. What is your organization's experience with that age group?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think one of the things we've talked a lot about in the hunger relief community is that somehow we make sure that young people have food all the way through high school. And then somehow, like when they go to college, we think it's okay for them to live on ramen noodles and, not necessarily nutritious food, and that's kind of like a badge of honor, right? Is that you made it through college and didn't eat food that was good for you. We're trying to change that narrative because we all recognize that wasn't such a good idea when we were in college. And a lot of us were fortunate not to have homes where we could go home and raid the cupboards and bring food back to school. But there's many, many, many students in colleges, at colleges like the University of St. Thomas, Hamline University, Macalester, Concordia, and St. Paul College and Metro State that really are struggling with food insecurity. They may live at home and there just isn't enough food at home. And so we started our food shelf distribution at St. Thomas because they were asking their students to donate to the food shelf, to Keystone's food shelf. And they had some students come to them and say, well, how can I use the food shelf? I don't have any money to donate. And so that started this wonderful partnership, and we work with them on the Tommy shelf. And so we bring our mobile food shelf there every month. It's open to neighbors as well. It's primarily used by students. Same at St. Paul College and at Hamline. We have just found that many young people that are in college are also caring for family members, are also supporting children of their own, and that the expense of going to college as well as trying to work and take care of a family makes it tough to make your budget stretch very far. So I think part of what we're trying to do is, as I said, change that narrative that it's like a badge of honor to be starving in college, regardless of what age you are, and also to just make sure, again, that these resources are available and that we bring them to where young people already are.
Nate, you're one of the organizations that is providing that food right up until the time they graduate. Have you noticed anything about, alums of your program and where they go and whether you are been able to steer them to any resources?
That's a good question. No, because most of our partnerships are with schools. As soon as those kids rotate out of the school system, we kind of lose our touch point. The way we approach that particular issue is that we recognize that even though we are serving a child through a school, we recognize we're actually serving the whole family. And so we know that food that we give to a given child will likely be consumed by the entire family, from a 1-year-old all the way up to grandma and grandpa, and we're very comfortable with that reality. Unfortunately, we don't have real good data on what happens to to students once they reach that point where they're out of the school system.
Hmm.
And so I don't have, I could pontificate about certain, make some educated guesses on kind of the dynamics there, but I don't want to belabor the point.
That's okay. I saw someone just posted that I think McAllister now has little libraries where instead of food, they now have, instead of books rather, there's now food. So that's one way folks have taken that out. I don't know if that was a McAllister specific project or if that's gone all over, but that's kind of a cool thing. Kelly, the young adult Indigenous population, how are they doing?
There we go. So our families, since they're multi-generational, a lot of our families, the minute that they move out, they're coming with their parents and telling us, hey, my kid just moved out and we want to get them their own household and get them their own account. A lot of our families, they've been with us for many generations. So their grandma was with us. They remember coming to the food shelf when they were little. I remember seeing some of our families grow up with us. So their kids will oftentimes come into the food shelf and will give us hugs, or it's my birthday today, or, we watch their kids grow up with us and we build a relationship with these youth. And so not being able to connect with them this past year has been even tough on us because these are our families. The Indigenous community is a really close-knit community. So I don't get in the habit of calling our families clients because to me, they're not clients. They are our families. So when they get to the age of where they have their own household, then they get their own household and they get their own account. And then they're coming in to shop for themselves. So then they can get their own food. We also partner with Inda Young, and that is Inda Young is a youth homeless shelter for permanent supportive housing. So they as well have youth that are between the ages of, I think it's 16 to 24 that are in permanent supportive housing, and we deliver food to them as well. So we are meeting that need as we can. And a lot of our agency partners in the American Indian community, they know if they're not already a client or a family of ours or using our services, then they're going to get them connected with us to start receiving food from us.
Okay, thank you. An interesting question this is for any of you. How would increasing the minimum wage impact youth hunger? And are there any other state laws that we should be looking at in terms of changing or adapting or to that address youth hunger? Who wants to tackle that one? Don't all jump at once. Okay. Will it have an impact, do you think? Mary? Mary McKee?
I'm happy to jump in on that one because, one of the biggest challenges we have in our country is just the stratification of wages, is the number of people that are living in jobs that are just simply not providing an affordable wage for a family or a young person for that matter to maintain a household at a very, kind of modest level. And so we've just not seen wages rise for the majority of people. We've all seen wages rise for some people, but we haven't seen the wages rise at a rate that other things have risen. And so I think until we kind of address that as a country, we're going to continue to have people that live in poverty and aren't able to make ends meet with full-time jobs, both people in the household having full-time jobs. So in St. Paul in particular, prior to COVID, the housing issues that we were experiencing are just really challenging because one of the things we learned, and I'm sure others have learned this too, is a family that gets displaced, being able to find another affordable housing is quite challenging. And so I just think we have low wages that really impact kind of families and young people's ability to really thrive and kind of build the life that they deserve to build. And so I don't know exactly what the answer is. Minimum wage is one of the answers, but I think we have to create more high-paying jobs that are jobs that used to be around before, when you could have a middle-class lifestyle and not have to have both people working full-time. So there's just been enough shifts, and one of the things that hasn't shifted is wages.
Mary Christensen, just from your standpoint as a young person, do you think there are enough jobs out there for young people? Are they finding jobs when they want and need them?
Sorry, Bill, I'm not seeing Mary on here.
Mary Christensen, oh, she's in the top row of mine. But I don't know what that means for you.
Sorry, Mary.
Bill, do you want me to get to one of the questions?
Yeah, that would be great.
Amy had asked about what people could donate. And so Kelly said that non-perishable items are always needed. Hygiene and baby items are the #1 requested items. And donating money is helpful because we can stretch the dollar further, but any donation is greatly appreciated. And then Mary had listed their website. They have lists on their website that have specific ideas for donated items. So maybe we can include that on the resources. I wanted to remind everybody just to plug for the Giving Garden at Corpus Christi. It's going to be our 10th year this year. And just a reminder that all the produce that we grow goes to Keystone. So we've been delivering that to the Roseville site and now to the St. Paul site. So we're really thankful that we're partnering with Mary. So just a reminder, this summer, we need more hands out in the garden, and this spring to plant, and this summer to weed and to harvest. So it's right in our own church backyard, and we can socially distance. I'll let Mary answer, and then I'll get to Vince's question. Thank you.
Mary?
Oh, yeah. So I think there are some jobs available, but definitely with COVID, that's probably had an impact and made it harder. And I also think it's really hard for people with their families struggling. Many students I know are having to have like many jobs in order to help. And I think, raising the minimum wage would definitely help that, because with students making the minimum wage or even less as minors, when they're working really hard to support their families, I think even with them working and with their families working, it just for many people isn't enough to get them food and their basic needs and housing and everything. And I think especially for youth with going online and everything, and with COVID and the pandemic affecting them, it's especially difficult for their families and for youth. And I think with not having enough jobs, and when they do have jobs that don't pay a wage that they can support their family on, they need to have many people in the family working many jobs. And I think that it's just very hard for them to get everything they need met. And so if the minimum wage went up, that would definitely make it easier for some families. And so, yes.
Thank you, Mary. Lori.
Okay. All right, so Vince, asked this question for Kelly. It sounds like your organization is St. Paul Ramsey County focused. Is there a Minneapolis, Hennepin County counterpart?
Yes, there is. So there's Division of Indian Works in Minneapolis, and actually they were very similar to set up to how we are, and they focus on the West Metro. But since COVID has happened, we have really opened up our boundaries, and we have seen an increase in Minneapolis side. Families come over to us to use our services as well. But there is Division of Indian Works who has very similar services to us.
So you don't turn someone away if they have the wrong address?
No, we definitely do not. And as I'm sure as Mary and knows that you are not allowed to turn anybody away from a food shelf at all. No matter where they are from, you cannot turn anyone away. So,
Okay, thank you. I don't have, we're at 8:22, so we're getting close to the end. Lori, have we covered all the questions?
I have another question, and I don't know if Nate said this. I just want everyone to know that every meal used to be called the Sheridan Project. So maybe you have heard of that. Maybe you mentioned it. Sorry, Nate. But it's just so, and that's right. It's located right in Roseville. So it's, and they are serving the schools in Roseville. So I want you to make sure you know that I think, are they at every school? I can't remember, Nate.
In Roseville?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe we're in every school. Yep.
And in
They're very-
addition to how many districts are around is it around the country? Or?
I think we're in 31 districts kind of around the metro area. And I think our last record was about 466 different locations. So pre-COVID, we were in about 325 schools. Now it's a little bit hard to track because we'll work with the district and they may only be open in a couple buildings. So that's why I'm making my funny faces here. But yeah, our goal is to be in 522 schools by the end of next year.
522 schools in Minnesota.
Yep.
Okay. Is it mostly metro then? Is there any move to like Duluth or any places like that?
We're slowly kind of working our way out. And so our 10-year goal is to be available to every school in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin that wants the program. So if there's already a backpack program there, we certainly don't want to take over or stop the good work they're doing. But where there isn't a program, we'd love to serve the students there.
Yeah, there's plenty of need to go around. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Oh, Lauren.
I have one more question. I don't know, maybe we've touched on it, but this is for everybody. Does your organization have an advocacy component? Are there any bills before the current Congress which we could advocate for? Is there anything pressing?
Yeah. Mary McCune did touch on a couple, I believe.
Okay.
Anyone else have any specific bills?
I know we've been working with several other organizations, and this is Nate from Every Meal. We've been working with several other organizations around universal meals in Minnesota schools. So essentially this would empower schools to offer free meals to all their students for breakfast and lunch, and really leverage the resources of the school cafeterias to help students. So I'm looking for the specific data on when that was going to kind of where we were at in that process. And once I find it, I'll put it in the chat link.
Yes, and if we go off the air, as they say, before that, we can put that in the email. We're going to send a follow-up email to everyone who registered tomorrow with all the links that we've talked about. And that includes the donate link, which we hope you've all taken advantage of. As we said, we're gonna split the money 4 ways, and it's going to include not only what you're giving, but the match that's coming from our bequests. So we're pretty excited about that. And then we'll have all the dates of those important advocacy opportunities that are coming in the next couple of weeks that Deanne talked about. It is 8:25. Lori, it looks like we have 2 more messages, but I don't know if they were questions. They were not. They were.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. So terrific. And again, when you go to the donation link at Corpus Christi, it's going to say what do you want to give to, and click on the other line where it says other, and then fill in a youth hunger forum, and we'll take care of it from there. I'd like to thank all our speakers tonight. Mary Christensen from the Good Club, Mary McCune from Keystone, Kelly Miller from Interfaith Action, Department of Indian Work, and Nate Youngblood from Every Meal. Thanks to all of you who joined us on the Zoom call. We'll send up that follow-up tomorrow. And thank you all for coming. Peace and blessings to you all. Have a great rest of the week.